Hey guys, we finally made it. We are going to be talking about the quadratic formula. This is one of those really cool formulas that you see all over the place. And the great thing about the quadratic formula is there's no stipulations on it. No matter what your quadratic equation is, it can solve it. So the other three methods that we've learned are solving by factoring. Now that doesn't cover too much. So a lot of ones don't factor perfectly, so we can't solve by factoring. We can't solve by square roots for all of them because if it has a b, we can't use it, and we can't complete the square on all of them if we can't divide by the first number. So quadratic formula can be used for any equation. All right. Now the quadratic formula is actually found by completing the square on your standard form, but we're not going to show you all that. Let's just learn about the quadratic formula. Now, we all know that our normal equation in standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. That's standard form. And so whenever we're looking at a, that's my a, my b, my c, and that's what we're going to plug in here. We're going to take my b and we're going to plug it in here and here. We're going to take my a and plug it in here and here. And we're going to take my c and we're going to plug it in right there. So the great news is all we're doing is plugging into a formula, using our calculator to help us, and then simplifying it down, okay? So before we begin, though, I want you to be able to remember the quadratic formula, so I'm going to make a bit of a fool of myself, and I'm going to try to sing what we need to remember, okay? So here we go. X equals opposite b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So yeah, that was kind of terrible, right? But that was to the pop goes the weasel, but that's how we read it. Opposite b, x equals opposite b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So let's take a look and let's plug it in here for number one. So we're kind of taking this and we're plugging it into my equation. So first thing we need to do is find out what my A, my B, and my C are. So I'm going to say, okay, here's my A is 1, my B is 8, and my C is 10. Once you know what your A, B, and C is, so we move everything to one side, right? We find what my A, B, and C are, and then we plug it in. So we're going to go X equals opposite B. So opposite, if it's positive, we make it negative. If it's negative, we make it positive. Okay, so opposite B. So my B is 8, so it's going to be negative 8 plus or minus the square root of B squared. So we're going to go 8 squared minus 4AC. So my A is 1, so I'll plug that in, and my C is 10, so I'll plug that in. All over 2A. My A is 1, so we'll go 2 times 1. So we simplify this step by step. Now we always kind of want to start inside this square root. So simplify the stuff inside the square root. Heck, just use your calculator. Plug that into your calculator and it's going to tell you what's inside your square root, okay? Well, I'm going to do it in my head, okay? 8 squared is 64. All right. Negative 4 times 1 times 10 is negative 40. 64 minus 40 is 24. So this is going to simplify to x equals negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 24 over 2 times 1 is 2. Now, this is just like everything we've seen before, right? We're just simplifying this. There's no square root in the denominator, nothing like that. We're just simplifying it. Well, next thing that I'm going to do is take my 24 and I'm going to simplify it. I'm going to cake it. So I'm going to take that 24, we're going to go 24 divided by 2 is 12, 12 divided by 2 is 6, 6 divided by 2 is 3. So we're going to have a pair of 2's that we're going to pull to the outside, and on the inside of my square root, we're going to have a 2 times a 3, so we'll have a 6. So I'm going to have negative 8 plus or minus 2 square roots of 6 over 2. Okay, then we simplify it. All right? We're dividing the whole thing by 2. So that means I'm dividing negative 8 by 2. It also means I'm dividing this term by 2. We simplify using the heart method. Okay? So I'm going to rewrite this over here. Negative 8 divided by 2 is going to be negative 4. 2 square roots of 6 divided by 2 is going to be plus or minus square roots of 6. So there you have it. There's our answer. We were able to simplify it. We have our answer. Now, this, you could circle this, make that your answer, but we could also write it as two separate answers. We could write it as negative 4 plus square roots of 6, or we could write it as negative 4 minus square roots of 6, okay? So you can either write your answer as one big thing like this, plus or minus, or you can write it as two separate ones. It's really up to you, okay? All right, let's move on to number 2. Let's get more practice. We're just plugging into the quadratic formula and going from there. Now remember, we need to write it first in standard form. Okay, standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So, to do that here, I need to minus 3x and add 1 to get it all to this side. So, we're going to have 2x squared minus 3x plus 1 equals 0. Then, we take it and we plug it into my quadratic formula. So remember, it's x equals opposite b. Okay, let's label my terms here. So my a is 2, my b is negative 3, and my c is 1. Okay, so opposite b is going to be 3. Because my normal b is negative 3, opposite b is going to be positive 3. So we're going to go opposite b plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 3 squared. Don't forget the negative, and if you're squaring a negative, do not forget the parentheses. Okay, negative 3 squared minus 4ac, so 4 times 2 times c is 1. Okay, all over 2a, and a is 2, so 2 times 2. Okay, so let's use our calculator or whatever. And let's simplify this square root. So negative 3 squared is 9. Negative 4 times 2 is 8. 9 minus 8 is 1. So we're going to get 3 plus or minus the square root of 1 over 2 times 2 is 4. Oh, hey, the square root of 1, that simplifies. Square root of 1 is 1. So we're going to get 3 plus or minus 1 over the square root of 4. Okay, now here's the deal. Remember how I said there's technically two answers. If we're left with something that can combine, we need to split it up into two different things, two different equations to get my two separate answers. So I'm going to split this into two. So we're going to split one of them into be 3 plus 1 over 4. And we're going to split the other one to be 3 minus 1 over 4. Okay? 3 plus 1 divided by 4 is 1. So there's my first answer. X equals 1. 3 minus 1 over 4 equals 1/2. 2 divided by 4 is 1/2. So x also equals 1/2. So we actually get two real answers here, which hopefully makes sense. All right, guys, let's turn the page. And let's go ahead, let's use the quadratic formula here. So step number 1, we are going to move everything to one side. So I need to add 11, bring that over here, and we're going to get x squared minus 6x plus 11 equals 0. Then I need to plug all this in. Well, let's label my stuff. My a is going to be 1. My b is going to be negative 6, and my c is going to be 11. Okay. Then we go x equals opposite b. X equals opposite b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So x equals opposite b. So b is negative 6, so opposite b is going to be positive 6. We got 6 plus or minus the square root of b squared. So negative 6 squared minus 4 times a times c. Well, my a is 1, but my C is 11. That makes things pretty interesting, doesn't it? Okay, all over 2a, and my a is 1, so just 2 times 1. All right, use your calculator. Figure out what's inside the square root, and then we'll just rewrite it, right? Our calculator can't be used for everything. It won't simplify everything for us, but we can use it to just take care of what's inside the square root. Okay, so we get 6 plus or minus 6 squared is, I'm going to do it in 2 steps, 36 minus 4 times 1 times 11 is going to be negative 44. Crazy town. All over 2. Okay, 36 minus 44 is going to be negative 8. So we're going to have 6 plus or minus the square root of negative 8 over 2. All right, now we take 8 and we're going to cake it. So 8 caked. We have a pair of 2's in common, so we're going to pull out a 2. Let's rewrite it over here. So let's go x equals 6 plus or minus. Okay, we're bringing a 2 to the outside, a 2 stays inside, but I also need to bring out an I because of that negative. So it's going to be 6 plus or minus 2i square roots of 2, all over 2. All right, we got an I. So we can't really simplify any further, but I can reduce the top and the bottom by what I have down here. Look at this. We can go this divided by this and this divided by this, the heart, okay? Because we're technically dividing both of those things by 2. So since it goes in, we're going to get x equals 6 divided by 2 is 3. And 2i divided by 2 is going to just be I square roots of 2. So my final answer here, x equals 3 plus or minus I square roots of 2. Remember, we could also write this as 3 plus and 3 minus. So it's technically 2 answers. I just prefer to be lazy and write it together as 1. All right, guys, here we go. Number 4. So number 4. Once again, we need to move everything to one side, set it all equal to 0, and then plug it into our formula. So first, bring everything to one side. Let's go minus 15x squared plus 3x minus 3. Minus 15x squared plus 3x minus 3. So we're going to have negative 5x squared minus 6x minus 5 equals 0. Now let's plug that in. X equals opposite b. So my a is negative 5, my b is negative 6, my c is negative 5. Okay, so opposite b, opposite of negative 6 is a positive 6, plus or minus the square root of b squared. So negative 6 squared is going to be, well, let's plug it in, negative 6 squared minus 4 times negative 5 times negative 5. Okay, all over 2 times negative 5. This one's pretty complex, isn't it? Well, I am going to need to grab my handy dandy calculator. Where did that go? It's around here somewhere. There it is. Okay, so I'm going to have to grab my calculator, and I'm going to work this out. I'm going to plug in negative 6 squared minus 4 times negative 5 times negative 5. Okay, I'm just plugging in what's inside that square root. All right, then I'm going to hit enter, and we're going to get negative 64. That makes sense. So we're going to have x equals 6 plus or minus the square root of negative 64 all over 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. Okay, the square root of negative 64. Negative 64 is a perfect square. We can cake it. Look at this. We cake it. 64 divided by 2 is 32. Divided by 2 is 16. Divided by 2 is 8. Divided by 2 is 4. Divided by 2 is 2. So we're going to get a pair of 2's, a pair of 2's, a pair of 2's. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. 64 is a perfect square. However, there's also a negative in there. And since there's a negative in there, that's going to make an I. So it's going to be x equals 6 plus or minus 8I over 10. Now I obviously can't combine this because of that being 8I divided by 10. Doesn't really work out. So let's rewrite this over here. But we're going to simplify here and simplify here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite it as two fractions. Okay? I'm going to rewrite it as 6 over 10, right? 6 over 10 plus or minus 8I over 10. That way I can reduce both. So 6 over 10, both can be divided by 2, so it's going to be 3/5 plus or minus 8I divided by 10. Both those can be divided by 2, so it's going to be 4I over 5. So this is our answer. X equals 3/5 plus or minus 4I over 5. And once again, we can write that as two separate answers. You can combine this back together and make it one fraction, whatever. But that's how our answer will look. Okay? All right, our very last problem here, number 5. So number 5, a bicyclist is riding at a speed of 20 miles an hour when she starts down a long hill. The distance she travels in feet can be modeled by this function, where t is the time in seconds. The hill is 585 feet long. To the nearest second, how long will it take her to reach the bottom? Okay, so we know the bottom is going to be at 585 feet. So that's going to be the distance that we plug in. I'm going to plug in here 585 feet equals 5t squared plus 20t. Then we are going to move everything to one side and then plug it into my quadratic formula. So I'm going to minus 585 minus 585. I'm going to get 0 equals 5t squared plus 20t minus 585. Then I'm going to plug this into my quadratic formula. So I'm going to go x equals opposite b. So my a is 5, my b is 20, my c is that big boy. So we're going to go x equals opposite b, so negative 20 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 20 squared minus 4 times 5 times negative 585. All over 2 times a, and a is 5, so 2 times 5. Okay, plug in what's inside your calculator, inside your square root into your calculator. So let's see here, we're going to go 20 squared minus 4 times 5 times negative 585. That gives me a big number. We're going to get negative 20 plus or minus the square root of 12,100 over 2 times 5 is 10. Okay, 12,100. Well, let's see if I can find the square root of that. Okay, so I'm going to plug that into my calculator, and the square root of 12,100 is 110. Okay, so here is pretty much my answer. X equals negative 20 plus or minus 110 over 10. But now, remember, if I get an actual number for my square root without an I or anything, we're going to split into two things. We're going to go negative 20 plus 110 over 10 and negative 20 minus. So let's write that out. Negative 20 plus 110 over 10 and negative 20 minus 110 over 10. Okay, negative 20 plus 110 is going to be negative 90 over 10. Negative 90 divided by 10 is going to, 90 divided by 10 is 9. So we'll get one answer of x equals 9. On the other side, negative 20 minus 110 is negative 130. Negative 130 divided by 10 is negative 13. So here are my two answers. Only one of these can be the true answer though, right? And that one answer is my positive one, x equals 9. So how many seconds does it get to all the way to the bottom of the hill? It takes 9 seconds. All right, guys, long story short, just plug it into the quadratic formula. Remember, it's opposite b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Plug that in, you'll find your answer, okay? Just make sure you just check and simplify. All right, guys, hope you have a great rest of your day.